All right, welcome everybody. So here is the Trino meetup for July. We are going to be doing a kind of cross collab. Actually, earlier last month, I was over on the Great Expectations side of the house, giving a little talk on Trino, and this month we are blessed by the presence of one of the awesome folks from Great Expectations community, Ken Wade. He's going to be joining us shortly to give us his talk on great expectations in Trino to ensure data quality. So data quality is definitely one of those kind of things you hear popping up a lot of times. Like we've migrated far away from this like old big data days of old where we basically just dump a whole bunch of data in there and try to make sense out of it and don't really have much expectations on how good the answers are. We're trying to get to this point now in data where we kind of have more expectations out of like what we you know uh, essentially trust. Essentially, I don't want to say expectations because that's literally in the name of the software we're going to be using. But we want to build essentially more trust in the data and analytics that are coming out of our data lakes and data warehouses, right? And so Great Expectations is a very popular Python library that has grown dramatically in the last few years. And has become kind of one of the de facto standards to essentially put what they call expectations, essentially these little like asserts. You can think about it in like a testing sense, asserts along the pipeline of your data ingestion and things like that, or just data warehouse in general, to basically assert that your data is in a form that you're expecting. So very super excited to hear from Ken here in a second. Let's go through our typical housekeeping stuff. So on the agenda, I'm going to do my typical community updates. For those of you who are tuning in from Great Expectations community or other communities, or just by yourself, saw this on LinkedIn and thought it was awesome and clicked on it. We're going to give you a little bit of a background on what Trino is, what Starburst is, and then after that, we'll get to the meat and potatoes with Ken, and learn about Great Expectations and how we can use that and Trino together. So starting out with community, we have we're I mean, I'm very biased in saying this, but we're an incredible community, tech community that just a lot of people that love Trino, big data, and just full of data engineers, data scientists that are essentially just trying to kind of break away from previous data models of old that essentially slowed the data down. I'll cover Trino in a little bit, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But if you're looking to break into open source and learn about data engineering and a lot of the kind of cool things that you can do around like object stores and cool query engines that build on top of that, this is the perfect community to join. And so I highly recommend you go into trino.io/Slack. That will take you to a webpage that you can join our Slack channel and Slack community. And there's just a lot of people there to welcome you, give you answers if you're trying to set up things with Trino or just trying to poke around and figure out what Trino is. Or if you are a more advanced developer who already knows what Trino is or has some background in Presto, then you can kind of just basically go through and ask questions like, hey, what's something cool I can start working on, things like that. So I highly recommend Slack is like if you're gonna go to one place, go to Slack. I also do think this monthly show called Trino Community Broadcast with a friend of mine named Manfred. We do that monthly, and we talk about Trino, internals, architecture. We talk about the ecosystems and things that work with Trino. We also just talk about the community and things that are going on there. And so it's basically just a great way to kind of learn about the Trino as well. So for that, trino.io/broadcast, head to that URL. All these URLs, by the way, will be shared shortly in a link that's going out on YouTube. So don't feel like you have to like quickly write these down. This will live forever on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can always refer back to this video later. You're here at the meetups right now. We have Trino meetups that are divided into 3 time zones. We're slowly ramping up the EMEA and APAC time zones, so stay tuned to find out about those. There's the thank you very much, Anna, for the URL. So that URL, starburst.io/info Trino-community-resources, that's sitting in the comments section in YouTube. That'll take you directly to all these links. So anyways, Trino meetups are scaling up right now in EMEA and APAC, so keep an eye out for that. But we are very active and have definitely monthly sessions here in the Americas, and we'll shortly be doing more of these in EMEA and APAC. If you want to contribute to the project, trino.io/development is the place to be. You'll learn all about our philosophies and kind of how to get started there. And then if you want to write blogs or docs, this is another fun way to get involved in the community. So our blog is at trino.io/blog. You can read a couple there. And then, to contribute, just reach out to us on Slack and we'll help you out with that process. And then there's another final link in the docs location that takes you to kind of a README. And in that docs section, it'll show you how to, if you want to contribute to docs, it's a really good way to get started if you're not super familiar with the code base for Trino. And one last one I'd like to say is check out Trino Forum. It also has a link on there. It is another one of these places that we're trying to kind of take a lot of the information, things that we talk about here on meetups directly in conversations at conferences or also on Slack, and try to condense a lot of that information into kind of a knowledge repository in Trino Forum, as well as let you kind of do kind of a Stack Overflow question and answer style. Like you can ask questions there too, just like you could in Slack. We just want to basically have this be a place that can be searched through Google. So anybody who doesn't know how to find the Slack can essentially find a lot of answers, Stack Overflow style, here on Trino Forum. So definitely join that as well if that interests you. A big announcement, we have Trino Summit 2022 coming up. We just opened up shortly or a little while back the registration and the call for speakers. So if you are using Trino and any kind of like peripheral ecosystem type piece there, definitely either register if you want to hear about this, of course, but then if you want to speak, you can go to the URL down here. What is it? The Sessionize. Sessionize. We're fighting over who can show these things or not. Sessionize.com/Trino-Summit-2022. And again, now all of these links are included in the one link that was shared in YouTube. So definitely check those out. And that's going to be November 10th at 9 a.m. It will be hybrid. It's going to be a couple of us live there in San Francisco. If you can't make it, and obviously COVID concerns, things like that, we're also going to have a virtual option for you to attend and watch the talks. So really great. It would be really great to see all of you all there live and virtual. And then for attending the meetup today, we do constantly give out these Trino t-shirts. If you have not requested one before, and essentially submit your information to this URL. This again is also included in that master URL that we sent out previously. And you can get one of these cool Commander Bun t-shirts. That is the URL right there. And again, that will be included on the community resources page that we sent previously. So definitely check that out. And finally, if you have any questions on the show today, feel free to, if you're on YouTube, you can interactively, as well as on LinkedIn, we can also check on LinkedIn. If you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, put your question in and we will ask it near the end of the show. And then otherwise, if you have questions kind of looming around afterwards, again, go to Slack, come find me. You can look me up by Brian Olson or by Bits, and you'll be able to find me on Slack, and we'll be able to help you there. So I am running low on time. Let's get right to a real quick bit on what is Trino and what is Starters. So Trino is a high-performance MPP SQL engine. So what does that mean? So a lot of times people see Trino, we have this handle TrinoDB and stuff like that. So people will think like Trino must be some sort of database. It's a SQL query engine, so therefore it must be a database. But actually, that's not quite true. We don't really actually handle our code base essentially does not handle the storage of most of the data that we connect to. Now there is a bit of an aside here that we do some of that when it comes to like dealing with the data lake, but for the most part we connect to a lot of different data sources. Some of them being like MySQL, so your traditional RDBMSs, MySQL Postgres. You also have NoSQL ones like MongoDB and Elasticsearch, and we also connect to various things like these real-time or near real-time systems like ClickHouse, the Druid, and Pinot. And so we have all three of those that we also kind of connect to. So if you're trying to basically connect to all these things. Okay, well, great, we connect to them, but what exactly does that mean? Well, now you're able to actually query from one central space where you're actually running some query, and ideally, pulling data from, let's say, some real-time system, and maybe merging that with some data that you have in your object store or in Hive, Iceberg, whichever table format you're using there. But it's going to be stored in like some S3 format with some historical data for your data lake. Or you might even be connecting that to a data warehouse. So let's say BigQuery. That's another thing that Trino can connect to. And you want to join that historical data with some like fresh real-time context or something like that. So Trino is actually able to just be this query engine that kind of, if you think about it, the Lord of the Rings style, it's like that one query engine to rule them all. And so it can actually speak the language of all these different query engines. And it does so by you only having to speak one language to it. So it's essentially, you're talking pure ANSI SQL, kind of very similar to like what you would do when you were talking to Postgres. We very closely follow the ANSI SQL standard. And so you talk to Trino and it's able to not only translate for you, but then merge data that you're pulling out of all of these different data sources. Does this in an MPP fashion. So that is in a basically parallelizable manner, meaning like, you're trying to pipeline moving data from all these different sources across various threads, across different nodes, and you're trying to do it as quickly as possible without as few blocking operations as possible, something like sorting or something like that. So Trino then becomes this high performance, beats pretty much anything out there right now that can run on like a query engine that can run on a data lake, and is just ridiculously fast and highly concurrent, right? It is open source, community driven, very much like has a lot of these big names behind it that have adopted it back before it was called Trino, it was called Presto. And so this was like, Netflix, Airbnb, a lot of these big Valley companies started out contributing and adopting it in the earlier days. And now we're seeing a kind of a new phase of the project and its maturity to kind of open itself up to a lot newer types of kind of mid-level to startup companies that we're making it a lot easier to maintain and update. Obviously, following a lot of the old paradigms is separation of compute and store. You can do SQL on anything, not just Hadoop anymore. That used to be the big SQL on Hadoop. You can now do SQL on all these different data sources that we just talked about, and you can do those federated querying. And finally, we have a full-on Helm chart that the community maintains. You can deploy it in Kubernetes on-prem. You can deploy it on the cloud, and you can also just do, if you're really feeling scruffy, just deploy it with a tarball and have fun like that. But not many people like to do that these days. They're usually doing the Kubernetes stuff. So that's what Trino is in a nutshell. Feel free to ask me any questions if you're wanting to know that. So what is Starburst? The Starburst is another distributed query engine, but it's built on Trino. It's essentially, we are enterprise Trino. And so we offer two primary products, Starburst Enterprise and Starburst Galaxy. Starburst Enterprise is basically like, Trino on steroids. You're still deploying it locally. You're still getting a lot of these cool advantages and support now that Trino had brought you, but you're also getting you're not getting support in the open source, obviously, except for, by the grace of whoever's on the Trino Slack channel, but you will get 24/7 support from the Starburst side on the enterprise side. So that one, you're still though kind of in the management. You get the control and be able to manage how your deployment goes, but you do still have to kind of worry about if this deployment goes down, I can contact Starburst support, but I need to still manage a lot of the stuff that's going on my local on-prem or in the cloud. Galaxy takes away the rest of that for you. So if you're just totally not interested in managing your own deployments and things like that, Starburst Galaxy is the kind of version that is like more, SaaS cloud-based. I don't have to worry about anything about deployment, scaling, none of that stuff. So that is essentially, what Starburst provides from the community standpoint. So once you've scaled up on Trino and you're like, I don't want to mess with any of this anymore, I've done the proof of concepts. I have this working pretty well now. I just don't want to manage it anymore. Starburst is kind of the logical next step. So in a nutshell, that's essentially what those two are and why you're here and what you'll be able to learn about. And now, as we go across, let me bring Ken onto the stage. So Ken, let me really quickly. So you are a developer advocate, just like me, at Great Expectations. So welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So
Uh,
we'll switch over to your side, and I'm super excited. I did the kind of inverse of this conversation, like in the last month's meetup for Great Expectations. I found Great Expectations to be such a joy to work with. It was like really cool to just see that there's just all of these preset expectations, which are what you'll tell us about here in a second, to kind of like go through, and they're already pre-formatted for you. And you basically, like, sometimes I was like, well, what kind of things do I want to expect out of my data? Well, you guys have this like super long library to even choose from and learn about that probably is built up by experience of a whole bunch of other companies that use Great Expectations. So it's a really cool product. Tell us a little more about it.
yeah, one of the great things about the core expectations that exist in the Great Expectations package is they've been battle tested for quite a while. And not only the ones that have been made internally, there are a large number that are created by our community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty recently, I'd say a couple months ago, we had our own hackathon. And I want to say there were over 100 new custom expectations added to our library.
Yeah, check it out. Let's see.
So actually, if you go to greatexpectations.io/expectations,
Here, let me
this is
remove
the
that banner for you so you can see it. There we go.
yeah, this is the what's known as the expectation gallery, and as of today, there are 276 expectations.
Yeah, there's a lot to look through, and that's great. I'm not. I'm sure you'll tell us what an expectation is. I was going to ask you what is an expectation. If you or are you just going to? Or am I cutting ahead?
No. So I mean, essentially, an expectation is like a test for your data. It's all about making things reliable so that you understand the shape of your data and what's there.
Nice.
Many times you're going to be getting new data in, and you want to make sure that the new data, maybe it's a new batch, maybe it's a new CSV file, maybe it's new records. You just want to make sure that whatever data you're processing is what you expect it to be.
Yeah.
Awesome. Name.
Cool. Well, I'll leave you to the rest of this. I just wanted to get that definition out of the way and take it away, man. I'm really excited to hear about this.
Yeah. So while we're checking out the gallery, I just want to show you. So there are a number of data sources that are available. And many of pretty much all except maybe one or two of our core expectations have Trino support, as you can see in our Trino column here. And this is a good way if you're using Starburst and you want to know, hey, what's even available for me to try out. That's the quickest filter to get to the expectations that are available. Now, in this community, I'm sure that there's plenty of you that are participating in the current Space Quest League challenge. Essentially, what this is, it's a way of kind of testing your knowledge, testing your SQL knowledge, but you get to use some sample data, and the sample data that you're querying as a part of this challenge is actually available on the default cluster. So one of the first things you're going to want to do, if you haven't already, just kind of sign up for a free account, Starburst Galaxy. You can kind of click on through to get in there. And once you've set actually, let me share this gist as well. We can follow along. All right. So essentially, once you sign up, you kind of pick your own domain, and when you log in, you're going to be the admin of your own domain on Starburst Galaxy. You can just use the sample cluster that's provided there. So I'm going to check out the cluster that, just the sample cluster that was provided. And one of the things you're going to want to do is get your connection string. Now, unfortunately, none of these is going to be easy enough to get a working connection string with SQL Alchemy in Trino. So we're going to have to get the parts and kind of massage them a bit. So there are a few things. The username, when you're connecting with the JDBC driver, you have the username, and I'm assuming these are just different parts of, I'm assuming different users would have a non-account admin.
Correct.
But when you're connecting through just using SQL Alchemy, which is the it's Python's SQL magic thing that's been around for maybe, I want to say, over 10 years. But there are so many drivers and so many different for different query engines and different databases that allow you to interact in a consistent way. And so there is a Trino driver. How to that real quick. There's the Trino Python client. This is the one that will be installed when you pip install Trino, and it's good to go. But in order to build a connection string, you actually want to use only the username. You're also going to want a URL encode that at. And if your password has any characters that could be a part of this connection string, you're going to want to URL encode those as well. So essentially, you're going to get a connection string in this format. So it's going to have your user, you have your password. It's going to have the host name, which is the same one that's generated from here. And then you're also going to want to specify your catalog. So we're going to use the sample catalog, which has the astronaut and mission data, mission tables that are part of the Space Quest League. Now, locally, to get started, once you have your database, or once you have your connection string to your cluster, you can go ahead and just create a virtual environment locally, standard way. You're going to want to install Great Expectations with the Trino driver and SQL Alchemy. This is the easiest way to do that. Next, you're going to want to initialize your Great Expectations environment. So this command is essentially going to create the structure for your configuration. It's going to hold your validations. It's going to hold everything relevant to your Great Expectations project. And so there's a nice uncommitted folder. Uncommitted folder within this new Great Expectations tree. And that's a perfect spot to add variables such as your password, the password you set up with your cluster. And this is strictly so that we can use interpolation later on, right here. So you create a new data source. You want to be able to connect to your cluster. There's some things that pop up. It's a very simple command line with the menus. You typically running through some of the default settings, some of the defaults. And when the data source is about to be created, you're going to get a Jupyter notebook open up, and that's what you're going to buy. So typically, you're going to set your data source name, just something useful for you because you can have many different data sources. And then you're going to want to pop in that connection string, the thing that we built up over here. But since we have our password in our config variables, you can actually drop that part in for your connection string. The end of the notebook will show some output, letting you know that there are some data assets. Typically this would mean these would be table names. Table assets could also be file names as well if you're dealing with CSV or work files. So. Next up, you're going to create a suite of expectations. Now, a suite of expectations is essentially just a collection of expectations that you want to apply to relevant columns and columns in your tables. And so what we do here, we leverage what's known as the user configurable profiler. And what it does, it will actually profile the data that you specify. So we're looking at the astronauts table, the demo astronauts table. And so it's going to go through, it's going to find all the columns. And then you can specify which columns you want to exclude or include and let the profiler do its thing. And it'll run through and it'll generate, I believe it's this one here. So this is the suite of expectations that were generated. I'm choosing to only profile on these 3 columns in the astronaut table. And so there are about 17 expectations that were generated just based on what's in these. And you can see that the expectations are all human readable as well when they're rendered in this suite. So for these 3 columns, these are all the expectations that we want to apply. Now, typically that's going to be your first pass at generating expectations, and the workflow is one where you're going to want to kind of tweak and adjust to see what's right for you. But the profiler gives you a great head start. So this run here, this is showing the status. All the expectations are passing because yeah, everything is within what was profiled. But if we want, we can actually adjust. Let's adjust our suite. So I'm going to run a command that's going to open another notebook.
Okay, what's the command that you're running right now?
Great expectations suite edit, and then I pass in the name of the suite.
Okay, so great expectations is like the base, like the kind of actual binary, and then
the base command is great expectations, and there are a number of subcommands. So there's the init command, there's a data source command, there's a suite command, there's checkpoint command, there's a docs command.
Okay, so this is taking the suite that you're showing here, and you're basically going to be able to go in and edit. And when you say notebook, I think this is something that not many people are going to be familiar with. But when you currently, a lot of this stuff is actually generating a lot of these like configuration files. that ultimately, sometimes it's like Python code, but other times it's like, basically just like config files, essentially config.py or something like that. And so,
Typically YAML files, yeah.
or YAML, sorry, that's what. And so you essentially will get some YAML files that get output from this. And what you're doing is like this is allowing you to basically edit all of that using a Python session in a Jupyter notebook. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's essentially it.
Okay.
So you can see here, you can see this is the batch request, like for our batch. And we can just run this. And so right here is where we can see all of the various expectations that were generated and added to the suite. And we can see them, these are the table level expectations. So expect table columns to match this order list. Now, it's very common that our column expectations, and the majority are going to be based on your column. So it's saying, hey, expect in this column, the value should be in this set here. And that's based on what was profiled earlier. All these names here. Making sure that all the values are a certain type within a column. Let's just so total number of emissions is like saying the max value we want to allow is 7. Let's just change that to 6.
So what you're doing here is like this validator object was created in that first step that you created the batch request. Is that right?
Yeah, let me go to right here.
So basically this created in the Python session that there was essentially some validator object that that you pulled from this batch request that ultimately did some sampling and figured out like if anything had changed, and then essentially pulled up the existing expectations. Now you take this validator object and now you can go through and run each individual expectation, some that you still want, some that you don't want, some that you want to change, and now you can update what this suite is validating on your data, essentially. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm just going to like run through the rest of these.
Was that last one up there false? So it looks like that there was a failure on the one that you changed the value. Yeah, it showed the thing finished, but I saw the success value that got
False.
returned was false.
Yeah.
So that was the
Okay.
one that you changed,
Yeah.
right?
The observed value is 7. Like, hey, this is something that we're not expecting.
Right.
But as we finish running these, we're going to save them back to the suite and then run a checkpoint and generate our data docs. All right, so at this point, once this cell finishes, so now we see status failed. You see there's one unsuccessful. Go on through and find it. And so one of the great things about Datadocs and alerts as well is you can set up different types of alerts to let you know when something starts to fail. Maybe it's a Slack, maybe it's an email, maybe it's PagerDuty. But so this glossary of terms, in order to get the most out of Great Expectations, you do have to understand a little bit, like some concepts. So this is a great thing to have handy while you're while you're plugging away and trying things out, even if you're using the Now, there's one other thing to note about the Trino driver with SQL Alchemy. There is a slight difference in the way the cursor handles fetch one and fetch all. Typically on something like Postgres or MySQL, if you can fetch one, and then you follow it up by fetch all, and it'll get the remaining parts of your statement or your query. However, I noticed that with Trino, if you fetch all, it's basically all. I'm assuming because it's not a real there's not a real cursor.
Anything else you were wanting to go through in terms of covering for the demo, or?
No, I think that's about it for the demo. But but yeah, the driver itself is seen improvements, like even since we were working on the integration in the last few months.
Yeah.
Like initially, you needed to include your schema as well in your connection string. Now it works as you would expect with only the catalog instead of specifying a catalog and a schema. So I know the Trino drivers has a pretty regular release schedule as well. I think every week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, we do every 2 weeks for the Python driver. But yeah, it's definitely coming along a lot more now. Especially we have your community as well as the Superset, a couple other ones that go through the SQL Alchemy driver and stuff like that. And obviously, people use it directly as well. Those Pythonistas out there that really like the to just directly connect to Trino. So that's a very solid option. So we're starting to give it a lot more attention. So a couple questions that I had along the way, and by the way, feel free, anybody else who has some questions to post it up. We had a couple people kind of tagging other people in on the LinkedIn and stuff like that, but no official questions outside of this. So my first question was you showed that there was various categories of Trino can run these expectations, but not the ones outside of that thing. Is that just what you've tested, or is that you're for sure not going to be able to run this? This won't work until we have something validated through our system that can run this. So essentially, can I just try any expectation and see if it works and just run at your own risk and not put it in production?
I mean, so the things that show up in that gallery checklist, those are things that have been specifically tested.
Okay. So that's the great expectation step of approval. We know this works on the Trino library, and we have not anything outside of this, you're kind of like rolling the dice a little bit on knowing if it's like if it works all the way, because those expectations under the covers, they're probably in some way running different like SQL commands to the SQL alchemy, or essentially just different like Python commands that become SQL. And
Yeah,
that
well, actually,
ultimately,
there's a number of different what are known as execution engines. So for SQL Alchemy, or things that we can connect to through SQL Alchemy,
yeah.
There are a large amount that work fine, but even with SQL Alchemy, there's still some intricacies between different dialects. Maybe a certain aggregate function doesn't exist in this dialect, and you have to reference it by a different name, and have some logic like that. Also, if you're running great expectations on data frames, either Pandas data frames or Spark data frames, those will be different execution engines as well. So it's not everything being translated into SQL, but it's things being translated into a way to run them on the execution engine.
Are there certain expectations that like basically have like a case statement that says if it's this type of object that you're working with or this type of data frame, you handle it this way, else do it this way, else do it that way? Is that kind of
Yeah,
how?
I mean, sort of. It's not so if elsey, but
Yeah.
there's some things that would be attempted based on if a certain if a metric provider is there, and knowing which metrics to the expectations are going to be using in order
Okay.
to do their tests.
Okay, because in general, I was thinking like, are what's the way that you would generally, if you like, oh, I noticed that this is not supported on Trino, I want to go implement that. Is that like implementing a Python class, or is it implementing like another statement? Is there, or are there just some ways that it's structured so that there's some expectations that just won't be ever compatible with Trino?
Yeah, some things would be typically would just be adding methods to a class.
Okay.
So there are a lot of expectations that are pandas only, and a lot of those are the new expectations created through the hackathon.
Okay.
And part of that is like we were encouraging people to just get a new expectation out, and so, by the way, the easiest way to do it is just get it going on pandas. You can do it on other engines later as desired.
Okay.
But that kind of ended up being translated to we're going to knock out a ton of expectations in pandas only. So,
nice.
And that's another reason for that gallery in the data source view, to be able to see where support is and where support isn't. So that's good for anyone wanting to make a contribution.
Well, the thing I liked about that library too is it gives you kind of inspiration of like what are like, because a lot of times people are walking into data quality for like the first time nowadays, and they're like, how like I have some basic ideas like count and things like that, but then like or I'm expecting certain values on this column or this range. Those ones are pretty obvious, but then there's just like there's a whole lot more that as you're kind of looking through that gallery, it gives you a little more ideas of like, oh, I could do this, and this would have some expectation. And so I'm wondering if we have somebody that gets inspired here on the Trino meetup today, and they're like, oh, let me set this up and try out this expectation. Oh, this one's not supported by Trino. One, you could just try it, but then like the second round would be, okay, well, if I try it and it fails, like I'd love to go and get this working. How do I go ahead and do that? So where would people go, I guess, if they wanted to add that development? Like what's a good place to get started to kind of learn about how to just simply, I guess, implement expectations for themselves?
Yeah, in that gist that I shared earlier, there's actually a link to contributing custom expectations to great expectations.
Oh, cool.
So,
yeah. So the gist, by the way, is in the YouTube links there. That was submitted by Trino, so the Trino account. So just check that out if you it has all the information of like how to redo the demo that Ken just did, and then also how like all those resources at the bottom. I'm guessing it's one of the links in there.
Yeah. Also, it's one of the links near the bottom.
Okay.
But something else, since Trino provides so many different and unique aggregate functions, compared to other dialects and other engines.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity for adding some Trino first or Trino only expectations as well. Being able to do things that are easier or trivial to do in Trino, but would be difficult to do in other backends.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely see, a possibility for a lot of Trino only expectations.
Well, maybe we'll do a hackathon where we say, well, the only way to do this hackathon is in Trino.
Well, yeah, or even leveraging some of the you guys know some of your differentiating functions. Like, hey, leverage like these functions for for doing things. So
yeah, one of our like, or just put up a whole bunch of pull or issues that have a beginner's thing or something, or like a Python lovers tag, and then see if we can get them to roll on that. That sounds good. The other one I had is I noticed when I was setting this up, this also came up in mind. So I was setting up the data source and noticed there's you just for Trino specifically right now, it's just like you choose it as a relational database and then you choose it as other. That tripped me up because first I'm like, in my head I'm like, we're not a database, but obviously like it's like a trivial thing. It's a SQL thing. And then the other one was like, it's you would choose other. So that's just something to, really flag a second time. Like that's how you set it up when all of you all are going through and setting up your expectations. But is there any advantage to just like, other than just for clarity's sake, to having a Trino option, or is it pretty much just like?
No, I think there is, and that's something we want to add as well.
Okay, so that maybe is something that. So, and by the way, I asked this as like, this isn't necessarily something on Great Expectations. It's possibly something more even on Starburst side that needs to get done. But
no, it's on our end.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, like, that's definitely something I think from a clarity standpoint, at the very least, would be helpful. But then, even to if there's some sort of, some way that internally in the code that it helps to identify, this is a Trino data source and we treat it differently because X, Y, Z. I was curious if there was anything that came immediately to mind. I'm guessing, for instance, those aggregation functions, you would know, hey, we need to handle these a little differently because it's the Trino data source.
Mm. Well, a lot of those things can be inferred from the connector as well.
Driver. Yeah. Oh yeah, the driver. This driver.
You know the driver, so you know, hey, if you're using this driver and you're trying to do something with regex, like maybe you need to use regexp versus something else in a different dialect. So.
Gotcha. It looks like we had somebody make a mention of pulling somebody else on. I didn't get any questions on LinkedIn. We don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of leave folks with? Like, where do they find you? Where do they find the Great Expectations community? Kind of follow up if they're really interested in learning more about this.
Yeah, I'd say greatexpectations.io is a great spot to go. There's a link to join our Slack community there. Documentation is there. That's kind of your one-stop shop. Nice.
Awesome. Well, Ken, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for one, pulling in the cool Starburst Galaxy twist on this. I did not. I thought you were. Most people usually do the regular open source side. I saw the Starburst Galaxy. It's like you ran. We actually should probably have like some clarity on like, here's how you use the setup for the Python driver. That's actually something that we've largely missed on the Starburst Galaxy side. But yeah, pretty cool that you set it up that way and used our kind of like our setup. So and then showed how it's just as easy to use Great Expectations on a SaaS service as it is on an open source thing. So I will be shortly also coming out with like a demo that I've already set up and everything like that. I just literally got to go record it. And it's gonna, be a local like Docker thing that we can pull up. So I'll be hopefully getting that out shortly to both sides of the community, so that if you're all are itching to try some Great Expectations and throwing these together, you can go ahead and use this video or the Great Expectations meetup video tutorial to check that out. But there's nothing else.
I also maintain the SQL Helper Python package. It's a wrapper to SQL Alchemy, and I do plan on adding Trino support to that as well.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Just kind of hammering out some of the oddities.
I'm kind of curious, is there outside of like so there's obviously like custom functions that every SQL thing has, but then outside of that, did you see that there was like, from a perspective of if you're trying to add support for a new dialect that already has, say, Postgres, we very closely model the SQL syntax on Postgres, but I know there are obviously then like certain aggregation functions in that. Is that only the aggregation functions that you found that needs the dialect, or are there other things
yeah,
that they
not
do?
even the aggregation functions, but just the fundamental way that things work with it when you're dealing with a cursor. Like I said, the fetch one and fetch all, like
Oh,
on the
gotcha.
base, like SQL Alchemy cursor object. So
Okay,
that kind of threw me. I was like, what is going on with this?
got it.
Like it's something things being duplicated. It was like, oh, it's just a little bug.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I'm sure we can address that too. I'll point this to a couple of the maintainers over on the Python
but yeah,
driver as well.
but also it might be useful if on the connection when you on your the cluster page,
Hmm.
the cluster screen just also have here's a SQL Alchemy screen, SQL Alchemy string for you.
Yeah, yeah, just like build that for them. I totally agree. Like that's definitely something we should.
Because the other examples, none of the others need that escaping of the at in your email address,
Yeah,
or that could throw some people off when if they're just trying to get going,
totally.
even just using SQL Alchemy with it. But
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. This is all good, really good feedback, Ken. Well, thanks for joining today. Really look forward to doing more of this kind of stuff with you all at Superconductive / Great Expectations. And y'all take care. Have a great day and try out Great Expectations. Let us know what you think. Cool.
yeah, thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.